What does it mean to live in a world where the boundary between the physical and the spiritual does not exist, where the islands of Japan are not just land, but the children of gods, and the sun itself is not a star, but a goddess hiding in a cave? Tonight, we look past the modern caricatures to trace the complete, unbroken timeline of this ancient worldview, from the churning chaos of creation to the first emperor. As we gather around the fire for this long journey, I am truly curious, where in the world are you listening from tonight, and what time is it for you? I love imagining our community settling in across the globe. So, take a deep breath, let your shoulders drop, and get comfortable. Welcome to Sleeping Scribe, where calming history stories help you unwind and gently fall asleep. Tonight, we dive into the Kojiki, the ancient record that kicks off the amazing journey of Japanese mythology from the very start. In the beginning, the universe was not the structured place we recognize. It was a fluid, shapeless mass. The old texts describe it as resembling a jellyfish floating on the surface of water, or a pool of heavy oil drifting aimlessly. There was no distinction between the heaven above and the earth below. All was mixed together in a dark, swirling confusion. From this primordial soup, something began to stir. The lighter, purer elements floated upward, expanding and thinning to become the high plane of heaven, known as Takamagara. The heavier, muddier elements sank, but they did not yet form solid ground. They remained a drifting slush, unable to settle. In this high, silent heaven, the first deities came into existence. They were born from the void itself. The very first was Ameno Minakaneshi, the lord of the center of heaven. He appeared in the high expanse, a solitary figure of immense power and stillness. Following him came to others, Takami Musubi and Kami Musubi. These three were the separate heavenly deities. They were unique beings. They were not born of parents, and they did not seek partners. They were Haitoragami, gods born alone. As quickly as they appeared, they hid their bodies within the clouds and the light. They did not interfere with the drifting oil below. They simply existed, anchoring the new universe with their presence. 7 generations of gods followed in this age of the gods. They emerged like reed shoots, pushing up through the mud in spring. They were vigorous and new, but the world below remained unformed. It was a young, incomplete place. The elder gods looked down upon this drifting chaos and decided that it was time to give the earth form. To accomplish this monumental task, they summoned the youngest and fairest of the divine couples. Their names were Izanagi, the male who invites, and Izanami, the female who invites. The elder gods bestowed upon this couple a magnificent tool. It was the aim-known boko, the heavenly jeweled spear. Its shaft was long and sturdy, and its blade gleamed with a mystical, iridescent light that reflected colors which had not yet been named. With this spear in hand, Izanagi and Izanami stepped onto the boundary between heaven and the chaos below. They stood upon the Aimno Yukihashi, the floating bridge of heaven. You might imagine this bridge as a radiant arc of rainbow, or perhaps a stable formation of clouds that allowed them to look down into the abyss. The silence was absolute. Izanagi held the great spear. He lowered the jeweled blade into the dark, oily ocean beneath them. He began to stir. The sound was rhythmic and gentle. KOW Oro KOW Oro Koworo Koworo. It was the sound of the thick brine churning, the very first sound to break the prehistoric silence. He stirred the deep waters, swirling the sediments, coaxing the heavy elements to bind together. When he felt the weight of the water shift, He lifted the spear. From the tip of the blade, the brine dripped. It was thick and heavy. It did not splash back into the ocean. Instead, as it fell through the air, it hardened, it solidified, it piled up layer upon layer until it formed a small, solitary island in the vastness. This was Onagoro, the self-curdling island. The smell of salt and wet stone filled the air as the land dried for the first time. The couple looked down at their creation. It was small, but it was solid. It was a beginning. With the stage set on the island of Onagoro, the pair descended from the floating bridge to begin their life together. The island of Onagoro was a blank canvas. It was a rough, craggy place of new stone, surrounded by the infinite flat ocean. But Izanagi and Izanami saw only potential. They decided to make this island their home. To do so, they needed a dwelling, a place to center their new life. They erected a magnificent palace. It was not made of wood and paper, like the shrines of later days, for those materials did not yet exist. It was a palace of divine energy and stone, a hall of 8 fathoms. At the very center of this island, they raised a pillar. This was the heavenly pillar, a massive column of stone that stretched high into the sky, connecting their new home back to the high plane of heaven from which they had come. It was dizzying to look up at it. The top disappeared into the mist, a physical link between the divine and the earthly. Once their home was established, Izanagi and Izanami wished to become husband and wife. They wished to fill this empty world with more islands and with children. They devised a wedding ritual. It was a ceremony of movement and balance. They would walk around the base of the massive heavenly pillar. Izanagi would walk to the left. Izanami would walk to the right. They would circle the vast stone column until they met on the other side. The air was filled with the rhythmic sound of their footsteps on the stone. They walked with purpose. They rounded the pillar, coming face to face, overcome with joy and admiration at seeing her partner. Izanami spoke first. Her voice rang out, clear and bell-like. She said, "Oh, what a fine young man." It was a simple declaration of love. Izanagi looked at her. He saw her beauty, but a frown crossed his face. He responded, "Oh, what a fine young woman." But then he paused. He said, "I am the man. It is not right for the woman to speak first." But the words of greeting had already been spoken. The ritual had been completed, even if the order was strange. They did not think too much of it at the time. They proceeded to consummate their union in the bridal chamber of the new palace. Time passed on the solitary island. Eventually, Izanami gave birth, but the child that was born was not what they had hoped for. It was a tragedy. The child was named Hiruko, the leech child. He was born without bones. He could not stand. He could not walk. He was as soft and pliable as the original chaos of the ocean. He was a silent, helpless being. The couple was devastated. They looked at their child and knew he could not survive on the hard stone of Onagoro. With heavy hearts, they wove a boat from reeds. It was a small, fragile vessel. They placed Hiruko gently inside. They carried the boat to the water's edge. The gray fog rolled in, obscuring the horizon. They pushed the boat out. They watched as the current caught it, carrying the silent child away into the misty unknown. This child would later float to far shores and be worshipped as Ibisu, the god of fishermen and luck. But to his parents, he was a sorrowful loss. They tried again. A second child was born, named Adua. But this island child, too, was faint and poorly formed. It was considered a failure. Izanagi and Izanami were confused. They were gods. They had the power of creation. Why were their children imperfect? Why did their creations fail to thrive? They decided to seek wisdom. They left the island of Onagoro and ascended the heavenly pillar, climbing back to the high plane of heaven. They approached the elder gods, the great spirits who sat in the shimmering light. They asked, "Why are our children not good?" The elder gods performed a great divination to find the answer. They took the shoulder blade of a deer and heated it over a sacred fire. The bone crackled and split. The gods read the cracks in the bone like a map. The answer was revealed. The elder gods looked at the couple and spoke sternly. The error was in the ritual. When you met around the pillar, the woman spoke first. This was against the way of things. The man must speak first. Go back and correct the ritual. Izanagi and Izanami descended once more. They returned to the pillar on Onagoro. They began the walk again. Izanagi walked to the left. Izanami walked to the right. The wind whipped around the pillar. They met on the other side. This time, Izanagi spoke immediately. "Oh, what a fine young woman," he declared. Izanami smiled and replied, "Oh, what a fine young man." The balance was restored. The ritual was perfect. From this union, the true birth of Japan began. They did not give birth to children of flesh and blood, but to children of land and stone. First came the island of Awaji, then came Shikaku with its 4 faces, then the Oki Islands, and the great island of Kushu. Finally, the massive main island of Honshu was born. In total, 8 great islands emerged from the sea. These were the Oyashima, the great 8 islands. Do you think you know Japanese mythology? Forget the anime demons and pop culture spirits. The real story begins before the earth was solid, with 2 gods standing on a floating bridge, stirring the ocean with a jeweled spear. But this creation story isn't a fairy tale, it's a tragedy. A husband who broke a sacred vow, a wife who became the queen of the dead, and the birth of the sun itself. Why did the first mother of Japan vow to kill 1,000 people every day? You have to hear the full story. Vegetation began to sprout instantly. Lush green forests covered the mountains. Rivers carved valleys through the stones. The gray ocean was broken by a chain of emerald jewels. After birthing the land, they began to birth the spirits that would inhabit it. They gave birth to the gods of the wind, whose breath would rustle the new trees. They gave birth to the gods of the mountains, who would hold up the sky. They gave birth to the gods of the sea, who would teem with fish. It was a time of abundance. Life was exploding in every direction. But in this frenzy of creation, a shadow was waiting. Izanami was exhausted, but she continued to bring forth life. She prepared to give birth to her last child. This was Kagutsuki no Kami, the god of fire. As the child began to emerge, the air in the birthing chamber grew impossibly hot. The stone walls radiated heat. The light shifted from the soft glow of creation to a searing, angry orange. Kokutsuchi was not like the other gods. He was pure, elemental destruction. As he was born, his body of fire burned his mother. Izanami cried out in agony. The flames consumed her genitals, searing her divine flesh. The pain was absolute. She fell back, struck down by a mortal illness. Even in her dying moments, Izanami's power of creation did not stop. She became sick. She vomited, and from the vomit, gods of metal sprang forth, born from the ore of the earth. She lost control of her body, and from her excrement, gods of clay and soil were born. It was as if her body was returning to the elements, creating the building blocks of pottery and agriculture even as she faded. Izanagi knelt beside her. He held her hand, but her skin was cooling, fading into the pale color of death. She looked at him one last time, and then she was gone. The mother of Japan, the creator of the islands, had died. She slipped away from the world of the living and descended into Yomonokuni, the land of the dead. Izanagi was broken. He buried her on Mount Hiba, on the border of the land of Azuma. He stood over her grave, and the silence of the world felt heavier than it had before creation began. He crawled around her head. He crawled around her feet. He wept uncontrollably. His tears fell upon the earth, heavy and bitter. From these tears, the weeping deity was born, a testament to his grief. But his grief soon turned to rage. He looked at the child who had caused this. He looked at Kagutsuchi, the fire god, who stood radiating the heat that had killed his beloved. Izanagi drew his sword. It was the Tengrasp saber, a long, curved blade that shimmered with a cold, lethal light. With a roar that shook the mountains, Izanagi struck. He swung the saber down upon his own son. He decapitated the fire god. It was a moment of shocking violence, born of heartbreak. The blood of the fire god splashed onto the rocks. It sprayed onto the trees. Where the burning blood landed, it did not just stain the ground, it transformed. From the blood on the sword blade, 8 warrior thunder gods were born, crackling with electricity and power. The death of fire brought forth the roar of the storm. The sky turned the color of morning ash. The metallic smell of blood mixed with the sulfur of the fire god. Izanagi stood amidst the carnage, panting, his sword lowered. But the death of his son did not bring his wife back. The silence remained. The loneliness was unbearable. He realized he could not accept this reality. He could not accept a world without her. Izanagi resolved to do the impossible. He resolved to cross the boundary between the living and the dead. He traveled to the edge of the world. He found the entrance to the underworld. It was called the Yomatsu Hirasaka, the slope of the underworld. It was a long, dark tunnel that descended deep into the earth. The air grew cold and stale. The light of the sun faded behind him until it was just a pinprick, and then it was gone completely. He walked in suffocating darkness. Finally, he reached the great gates of the palace of Yomi. He stood before the shadowy structure. He called out to her, "Izanami, my beloved, the lands we were making are not yet finished. You must come back." From the shadows, Izanami appeared. She stood at the palace door. She was shrouded in darkness, her form indistinct. She spoke, and her voice was filled with regret. "My lord, you are too late. I have already eaten at the hearth of the underworld. In the mythology of Japan, to eat the food of the dead is to become one of them." She was bound to this place, but she heard the desperation in his voice. She wanted to return. She said, "I wish to go back with you. I will discuss it with the gods of Yomi, but you must promise me one thing. You must wait here, and you must not look at me." Izanagi agreed. He sat in the darkness outside the palace. He waited. Time in the underworld flows strangely. It felt like hours, then days, then years. The silence was maddening. He could hear the squelching sound of the rotting earth. He could hear the distant groans of spirits. His patience began to fray. He needed to see her. He needed to know what was taking so long. He reached up to his hair. He took the wooden comb that held his hair in place. He broke off a single large tooth from the end. He cast a spell and lit the tooth on fire. It flared up like a small torch, casting a flickering, eerie light into the gloom. He stepped forward. He entered the palace. He held the light up, and then he screamed. What he saw was not his beautiful wife. He saw a rotting corpse. Her flesh was purple and swollen. Maggots squirmed and rolled over her body, making a sound like rustling dry leaves welling within her rotting chest. Her head and her stomach were the 8 thunder gods, rumbling with menacing power. She was a vessel of decay and storms. Izanagi was terrified. The horror of the sight shattered his love. He turned and ran. He scrambled back toward the entrance. Izanami saw him. She saw the fire. She saw the look of revulsion on his face. Her shame turned instantly to a fury that shook the foundations of the underworld. "You have shamed me," she shrieked. She commanded the hags of Yomi, the ugly females of the underworld, to chase him. Izanagi ran up the dark slope. His heart pounded against his ribs like a war drum. He could hear the hags gaining on him. Their shrieks echoed off the stone walls. He needed to slow them down. He took the headdress of vines from his hair and threw it behind him. As it hit the ground, it magically transformed into bunches of grapes. The hags, driven by a gluttonous hunger, stopped to devour the fruit. Izanagi gained some distance, but soon they were chasing him again. He took the bamboo comb remaining in his hair and threw it down. Where it landed, bamboo shoots sprang up instantly, tall and thick. The hags stopped again to pull up the shoots and eat them. Izanagi ran. He could see the light of the living world ahead. It was a faint gray square in the distance. But now Izanami herself was pursuing him. She was accompanied by the thunder gods and a horde of warriors from the dead. Izanagi reached the mouth of the cave. He found a boulder, the Chibikinaiwa. It was a rock so massive it would take 1,000 men to lift it. Mustering his divine strength, he dragged the rock over the entrance. The thunderous boom of the rock sealing the cave echoed across the land. The connection between the living and the dead was severed. They stood on opposite sides of the rock. Izanagi stood in the light of the living world, breathing the fresh air. Izanami stood in the eternal dark. Izanami's voice came through the stone, muffled and cold. "My lovely husband, if you do this, I will strangle 1,000 of your people every single day." Izanagi placed his hand against the rough stone. He replied with a heavy heart, but with resolve. "My lovely wife, if you do that, I will build 1,500 birthing huts every day." And so, the cycle of life and death was established. For every 1,000 that die, 1,500 are born. The population grows. Life continues. Gasping for air, Izanagi stepped back into the world of the living. He was tainted by the filth of death. He felt the sticky residue of the underworld on his skin. He needed to wash. He needed to purify himself. He walked toward a river, the water sparkling in the sunlight, unaware that his next act of washing would bring forth the most important gods in the Japanese pantheon. We leave Izanagi catching his breath in the sunlight, but the story is far from over. Before we continue to the birth of the sun goddess, I would love to know, are there other mythology pantheons you would like us to explore in this relaxing format? Perhaps Norse or Egyptian? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Izanagi stood alone on the banks of the river at Ara in Tachibana. He had just escaped the suffocating darkness of the underworld, and the memory of the rotting earth and the pursuing hags still clung to his skin like a heavy, invisible shroud. The air here, in the world of the living, was sweet and fresh, but he felt unclean. He felt the pollution of death, a spiritual stain known as kegarai, weighing down his divine spirit. To restore his power and his purity, he needed water. Not just any water, but the running, living water of a swift river. He stepped down to the water's edge. The river was clear and cold, rushing over smooth stones with a sound that was the complete opposite of the silence of the grave. Izanagi began to disrobe. He untied the sash of his garment and let it fall to the sandy bank. He removed his upper robe, his trousers, and his headdress. As each item touched the ground, the magic of creation that still surged within him caused a miracle to occur. The discarded clothes did not simply lie there, they transformed. From his sash, a deity of the road was born. From his robe, spirits of protection arose. Even the dirt he brushed from his skin turned into gods of misfortune and luck. It was a cascade of unintended creation, a testament to the sheer potency of the Father God. Naked and shivering in the cool air, Izanagi waded into the middle of the stream. The current pressed against his legs, strong and insistent. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the purified air, and plunged beneath the surface. He scrubbed his skin. He washed away the grime of yomi. He performed the first masagi, the ritual purification that would become the foundation of Shinto practice for eternity. He stood up, water streaming from his body in rivulets that sparkled in the light. He began to wash his face. He cupped the cold water in his hands and brought it to his left eye. As he washed the eye, a brilliance suddenly exploded from his face. It was not merely a clean feeling, it was a physical manifestation of light, so intense, so pure, and so warm that it blinded him for a moment. From the washing of his left eye, a daughter was born. She emerged fully formed, radiating a golden glow that illuminated the riverbank, the trees, and the distant mountains. This was Amaterasu Omikami, the great divinity illuminating heaven. She was the sun. Her presence banished the shadows, and the world seemed to take a breath of relief. Izanagi, awestruck, turned to wash his right eye. As the water cleared his vision, a different kind of light emerged. It was not the golden heat of the sun, but a cool, silvery radiance. It was a quiet, mysterious light that spoke of stillness and reflection. From his right eye, Tsukuyomi no Makoto, the moon god, was born. He stood beside his sister, a figure of calm and elegant beauty, balancing her brilliance with his serenity. Finally, Izanagi washed his nose. He snorted the water out, clearing his airways. But this was no simple breath. It came with a roar. The wind picked up instantly, whipping the river into whitecaps. The trees bent double under a sudden gale. From this act, Takeyosa no Makoto, the brave, swift, impetuous male, was born. He was the storm god. He did not shine, he rumbled. His presence felt like the heavy electric charge of the air before a typhoon. Izanagi looked at these three radiant beings standing in the river with him. He knew immediately that they were different from all the other gods he had birthed. They were the three noble children. He felt a swelling of pride. He took the string of jewels that hung around his neck, the beads clicking softly together, and placed them around the neck of Amaterasu. With this gesture, he gave her the mandate to rule. "You shall rule Takamagara, the high plane of heaven," he declared. To Tsukuyomi, the moon god, he gave the dominion of the night and the tides. And to Susanoo, the storm god, he gave the rule of the sea and the earthly plane. Amaterasu ascended to the sky, and the sun rose for the first time. Tsukuyomi followed, bringing the night. But Susanoo did not go to his realm. The storm god stood upon the earth, his face twisted in sorrow. He did not rule, he wept. His weeping was not a quiet sobbing, it was a cataclysm. His tears fell like torrential rain, causing the rivers to flood and the hills to collapse. His wailing withered the green mountains that his parents had worked so hard to create. He cried for so long, and with such intensity, that his beard grew long, flowing down until it reached the pit of his stomach. The sound of his grief was a howling wind that stripped the leaves from the trees. Izanagi, seeing the destruction caused by his son's sorrow, descended to ask him why. Why do you not rule the lands I gave you? Why do you weep until the green mountains wither and the rivers dry up? Susanoo looked at his father with red, swollen eyes. I do not want to rule here, he confessed, his voice cracking like thunder. I want to go to the land of my mother. I want to go to Ni-No-Kata Su-Kuni. I want to go to the underworld. Izanagi was furious. He had just escaped that place. He had just purified himself of its rot. And now his son, whom he had gifted with the sea, rejected his duty to chase after death. In a rage, Izanagi banished Susanoo. Get out, he commanded. If you will not rule, you will leave. Susanoo accepted the banishment. But before he left, he had one request. He wanted to ascend to the high plane of heaven to say farewell to his sister, Amaterasu. He wanted to see the sun one last time. Izanagi granted this, and Susanoo began his ascent. But Susanoo was a god of storms and violence. As he climbed the pillar toward heaven, his steps were heavy. The mountains shook under his feet. The earth quaked. The rivers boiled. The sound of his approach was terrifying. Up in the high plane of heaven, Amaterasu heard the commotion. She felt the vibrations rattling her golden palace. She looked down and saw her brother coming. She did not see a brother coming to say goodbye. She saw an invader. She thought, he is not coming with good intentions. He is coming to seize my kingdom. Amaterasu prepared for war. She untied her long, flowing hair and bound it up into tight bunches, the hairstyle of a warrior. She took the strings of jewels from her neck and wrapped them round her wrists and ankles as armor. She picked up a great bow and a quiver of 1,000 arrows. She stepped out to the edge of the floating bridge of heaven. She stomped her feet on the ground, striking the earth so hard that her legs sank into the soil up to her thighs, turning the soft ground into a fortress. She stood ready, a golden warrior queen, waiting for the storm. Susanoo arrived at the bank of the Aimnoya-Sukawa, the tranquil river of heaven. He saw his sister, armed and dangerous, her bow drawn. He raised his hands. Why do you come in such a fury? Amaterasu demanded. My heart is pure, Susanoo shouted across the river. I only came to say farewell before I leave for the land of my mother. But if you do not believe me, let us swear an oath. Let us perform a trial, and Yuki to produce children. If my intentions are pure, the children born will prove it. Amaterasu agreed. They stood on opposite banks of the misty, tranquil river. She asked for his sword, the 10-grasp saber. He handed it to her. She broke the sword into 3 pieces. She put the pieces in her mouth. The sound of the metal crunching between her divine teeth echoed over the water. She chewed the steel until it was a mist, and then she blew it out. From the mist of the sword, 3 elegant goddesses were born. These were the goddesses of the Munakata shrines, spirits of the sea roots. Then it was Susanu's turn. He asked for the long strings of curved jewels wrapped around Amaterasu's arms. She gave them to him. He put the hard, jade-like stones into his mouth. He crunched them loudly, grinding them into dust. He blew out the dust. From the mist of the jewels, 5 male gods were born. Susanu looked at the result. He grinned, a wild, reckless smile. Because the children born from my item, the sword, were gentlewomen, and the children born from your item, the jewels, were strong men, I have won. My heart is clear. It was a strange logic, but in his arrogance, Susanu declared himself the winner. And with that victory, the restraint he had shown evaporated. He did not leave. He stayed in heaven, and he began to riot. He was drunk on his own vindication. He ran through the high plain of heaven, causing chaos. He saw the beautiful rice paddies that Amaterasu had cultivated, the fields that fed the gods. He broke down the ridges that held the water. He filled the irrigation ditches with dirt. He trampled the young rice shoots into the mud. Amaterasu tried to make excuses for him. She said, "He is just excited. He is celebrating." But Susanu did not stop. He went to the sacred hall where the first fruits of the harvest were tasted. It was a holy place of purity. Susanu defecated on the floor, smearing filth in the most sacred of shrines. Still, Amaterasu tolerated him, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of a sister's hope. But then Susanu went too far. Amaterasu was sitting in the sacred weaving hall, watching her weaving maidens create the garments of the gods. It was a quiet, peaceful room, filled with the soft click-clack of the looms. Susanu climbed onto the roof of the hall. He found the piebald horse of heaven. In a gruesome act of cruelty, he flayed the horse alive, peeling its skin backward. Then, with a mighty heave, he smashed a hole in the roof and threw the bloody flayed horse down into the weaving hall. The horse crashed onto the looms. The maidens screamed. In the panic, one of the weaving maidens was struck by a flying shuttle and died. The sanctuary was violated with blood and death. Amaterasu could take no more. She was terrified. She was heartbroken. She was furious. She realized that as long as she was present, her brother would continue this rampage. She needed to leave. She fled from the weaving hall. She ran to the Amino Wato, the heavenly rock cave. She slipped inside the cold stone cavern. She grabbed the massive rock door and slammed it shut, sealing herself inside. Instantly, the world changed. The sun was gone. Takamagara was plunged into darkness. The central land of reeds, the earth below, went black. It was not just a nighttime darkness. It was a heavy, suffocating, eternal night. Without the sun, the order of the world collapsed. The myriad evil spirits, emboldened by the dark, rose up. Their voices were like the buzzing of swarms of summer flies, a constant, maddening drone that filled the air. Woes and calamities struck from every direction. The crops died. The air grew cold. The gods stumbled in the blackness, confused and afraid. The crisis was absolute. If the sun did not return, the universe would die. The gods knew they had to act. They gathered 800 myriads of them at the dry bed of the tranquil river of heaven. It was a sea of divine faces, illuminated by flickering torches. They needed a plan. They turned to Omawaikane, the god of wisdom. He sat and thought, his mind weaving through possibilities. Finally, he spoke. "We cannot force her out," he said. "We must lure her out. We must make her curious." The gods set to work. They called upon the blacksmith god, to forge a mirror. He took metal from the heavenly mines and polished it until it was like a pool of still water. This was the Yatano Kagami. They called upon the jewel maker to craft a string of curved beads, the Yasakani no Magadama. These items would become legendary. They uprooted a massive sakaki tree, the sacred evergreen, from the celestial mountain. They hung the mirror and the jewels on its branches. They hung strips of cloth, blue and white, as offerings. They placed the tree right in front of the cave entrance. Then the stage was set for the performance. Aim-no-Zoom, the goddess of mirth and dawn, stepped forward. She was the shamaness of the heavens. She took a large wooden tub and turned it upside down in front of the cave door. The hollow wood would be her drum. Uzume stepped onto the tub. She began to stomp her feet. Thump, thump. The rhythm was infectious. She began to chant. She untied her sash. She let her hair down. She entered a divine trance, possessed by the spirit of joy. As she danced, she exposed her breasts and pushed down her skirt, dancing with a wild, erotic abandonment that was both shocking and hilarious to the gathered gods. The tension broke. The 800 myriad gods looked at her wild dance, and they began to laugh. It started as a chuckle, then a giggle, and then it erupted into a roar. The high plane of heaven shook with the sound of millions of gods laughing in unison. It was a sound of life, defying the darkness. Inside the cave, Amaterasu sat in the pitch black. She heard the roar. She was confused. She thought, why are they laughing? I have hidden myself. The world is in darkness. They should be mourning. Why is there such joy? Her curiosity got the better of her. She stood up. She walked to the massive stone door. She pushed it open, just a crack, just a sliver. A thin beam of light shot out, cutting through the gloom. She called out, why does Aim-no-Zoom dance? And why do the gods laugh when the world is wrapped in shadow? Uzum, breathless from dancing, called back, we rejoice because there is a god here more noble than you. Amaterasu was stunned. A god more noble than the sun. She wanted to see. She pushed the door a little wider to peek out. At that exact moment, two gods held up the mirror they had made. The polished surface caught the beam of light coming from Amaterasu and reflected it back at her. She saw a brilliant, radiant figure in the glass. She did not realize it was her own reflection. She thought it was this new, noble god. She was entranced. She stepped forward, drawn by her own light. This was the moment. Taji Karao, the god of strength, who had been hiding in the shadows beside the door, lunged forward. He grabbed Amaterasu's hand. His grip was like iron. He pulled her. With a mighty heave, he dragged the sun goddess out of the cave and into the open air. Quickly, another god rushed forward with a shimenawa, a sacred straw rope. He strung it across the entrance of the cave, sealing it off. He declared, you may not go back in there. And then it happened. The sun was back. The light flooded the high plane of heaven. It cascaded down to the earth below. The colors returned to the trees. The buzzing of the evil spirits was silenced by the brilliance. The warmth touched the skin of the shivering gods. A great cheer went up, louder even than the laughter. Order was restored, but justice still had to be served. The gods turned their eyes to Susanoo, the cause of all this trouble. He stood there, stripped of his arrogance. The return of the sun had illuminated his crimes. The council of gods imposed a heavy punishment. It was not a death sentence, but a ritual cleansing and exile. They demanded a fine of 1,000 tables of offerings. Then they seized him. They cut off his long beard. They pulled out his fingernails and his toenails, stripping him of his weapons and his dignity. It was a painful, humiliating purification. Finally, they invoked the words of banishment. "Begone," they commanded. Susanoo was cast out of heaven. He fell from the high, radiant clouds, tumbling down through the sky. He was no longer a god of the heavens. He was an exile. He fell toward the misty mountains of the earth below. He landed on the peak of Mount Torafun, near the high river in the land of Izuma. The silence of the earth surrounded him. He was alone. He had no sword. He had no nails. He had no home. The storm god, who had raged against the world, was now a wanderer in it. But little did he know, his story was not ending in disgrace. It was just beginning. In the flowing waters of Izuma, a new trial awaited him, one that would offer him a chance at redemption. The sun has returned, and balance is restored. It makes one think about the balance in our own lives, the interplay between the quiet, dark moments and the bright, energetic ones. As we prepare to follow Susanoo down to earth, I am curious, do you find more peace in the bright energy of the day or the quiet solitude of the night? Let the question drift in your mind as we descend. The fall from the high plane of heaven was long and silent. Susanoo, once the roaring storm that shook the pillars of the sky, descended through the clouds, leaving the radiant realm of his sister far behind. He fell toward the earth, the central land of reeds, a place of mists, mountains, and mortal struggles. He landed not with a crash, but with a firm, decided step on the banks of the high river in the province of Izuma. The air here was different. It did not smell of celestial perfume or ozone. It smelled of wet earth, pine needles, and running water. The high river flowed gently, its surface reflecting the gray sky. Susanoo stood by the water, stripped of his beard, his nails, and his weapons, a god in exile. He was alone. As he gazed into the current, watching the water swirl around the mossy rocks, he noticed something drifting downstream. It was a pair of chopsticks. They were simple, wooden eating utensils, bobbing gently in the flow. To a casual observer, they were trash, but to Susanoo, they were a sign. Chopsticks meant people, and people living upstream meant there was a settlement, perhaps a place where a weary traveler might find a meal or a place to rest. Driven by hunger and curiosity, the exiled god began to walk upstream. The forest grew denser. The trees, ancient cedars with thick, twisted roots, leaned over the river as if listening. After some time, he heard a sound. It was not the chirping of birds or the rustle of wind. It was the sound of weeping. He came upon a clearing. There, sitting by the riverbank, was an elderly couple. They were Ashinazuchi and Tenazuchi, earthly deities of the mountain. Between them sat a young woman of breathtaking beauty, delicate and trembling like a wildflower in a gale. Her name was Kushinadaheim, the princess of the rice fields. The three of them were huddled together, their tears falling into the soil. Susanoo approached them. His shadow fell over the group. "Why do you weep so bitterly?" he asked. His voice, though stripped of its thunderous edge, still carried the weight of authority. The old man looked up, his eyes red and swollen. He spoke with a trembling voice. "My lord, we once had 8 daughters, but every year for the past 7 years, a terrible monster has come from the mountains. It has devoured them, one by one. Now it is the time for the beast to return. This is our last daughter. Tonight she too will be taken." Susanoo crouched down. "What is the form of this monster?" he asked. The old man shuddered. "It is the Yamato-Norochi. It is a serpent of 8 tails and 8 heads. Its eyes glow red like winter cherries. Its belly is always bloody and inflamed. Its body is so massive that moss and cypress trees grow upon its back. It stretches over 8 valleys and 8 peaks. It is a horror beyond words." Susanoo looked at the young princess. She was terrified, yet she possessed a quiet grace. A plan began to form in his mind. He saw a chance not just for violence, but for redemption. He stood up. "I am the brother of the sun goddess, Amaterasu," he declared. "If I save your daughter, will you give her to me in marriage?" The old couple gasped. They bowed their heads low. "We did not know who you were, great lord. If you can save her, she is yours." Susanoo wasted no time. He knew that brute strength alone would not defeat a monster of such size. He needed pruning. He turned the princess into a small, fine-toothed comb and placed her safely in his hair, hiding her from sight. Then he issued his commands. "Do not build a fortress," he said. "Build a fence. Build a fence with 8 gates. At each gate, build a platform. On each platform, place a vat, and in each vat, pour sake, but not ordinary sake. Distill it until it is 8-fold refined. Make it strong, sweet, and heavy." The couple obeyed. They worked feverishly as the sun began to dip below the mountains. The smell of the strong liquor filled the air, a pungent, fermented aroma that masked the scent of the princess. The preparations were complete. The 8 vats were full. Susanoo waited. Night fell. The forest grew silent. Then the earth began to tremble. A low rumble echoed from the deep valleys, vibrating through the soles of Susanoo's feet. The trees swayed as something massive pushed through them. The Yamato-Norochi arrived. It was a nightmare made flesh. 8 massive heads, swaying like cobras, emerged from the darkness. Their eyes burned with a malevolent crimson light, piercing the mist. The body was a landscape of scales and moss, a moving mountain of death. But the monster halted. It smelled something. It was not the scent of a terrified girl. It was the rich, inviting aroma of the sake. The serpent was gluttonous. Each of the 8 heads dipped down, intrigued. They found the vats. The liquor was tempting. Slowly, one by one, the heads began to drink. They lapped up the strong sake greedily. The sound of their drinking was like the rushing of 8 waterfalls. They drank until the vats were dry. Then the magic of the alcohol took hold. The red eyes grew heavy. The swaying stopped. One head dropped to the ground with a thud, then another and another. Soon all 8 heads were resting on the earth. The monster began to snore. The sound was deafening, a rhythmic thunder that shook the leaves from the trees. Susanoo stepped out from the shadows. He drew the 10-span sword he carried at his waist. He did not rush. This was not a frantic battle, but a rhythmic execution. He approached the sleeping beast. With calm precision, he began to hack the serpent to pieces. He chopped the heads. He chopped the necks. The river high turned red with the blood of the monster, flowing like a crimson ribbon toward the sea. The threat was ending, slice by slice, as Susanoo moved down the length of the beast, cutting through the massive tails. His sword suddenly struck something hard. Clang! The sound rang out, sharp and metallic. Susanoo stopped. He looked at the edge of his own blade. It was chipped. He was perplexed. What could be harder than his divine sword inside the flesh of a serpent? He carefully sliced open the tail. There, embedded in the meat, was a sword. He pulled it out. It was a magnificent blade. It was cold and white, shining with a pristine, dangerous light. It hummed with power. This was the Murakumo-Notsurugi, the sword of the gathering clouds of heaven. It was a weapon far superior to his own. Susanoo held the sword up. He realized that this was a treasure too great for him to keep. He thought of his sister, Amaterasu, shining in the high plane of heaven. He thought of the trouble he had caused her. As a gesture of reconciliation, a peace offering to bridge the gap between earth and sky, he decided to send this sword to her. Later, it would be renamed Kusanagi, the grass cutter, and become one of the 3 most sacred treasures of Japan. The monster was dead. The river ran clear again. Susanoo took the comb from his hair and transformed Kusanadaheim back into her human form. She looked at him, her eyes full of gratitude and love. They needed a home. They traveled through the land of Izuma, seeking a place to build a palace. They came to a place called Suga. The air there was clean and still. Susanoo felt a deep sense of refreshment. "My heart is refreshed," he said. As they stood there, beautiful white clouds began to rise from the earth, building a wall around them. It looked like a fence of 8 layers, protecting their new life. Inspired by the beauty of the moment, Susanoo spoke. The words that left his lips formed a poem, the very first waka poem in the history of Japan. Yakomo tatsu izoma, yajaki sumagomi, ni yajaki sukaru, sono yajaki wo. 8 clouds rise. The eightfold fence of Izuma. To house my wife, I build an 8-fold fence. Oh, that 8-fold fence. It was a song of protection, of home, and of peace. He appointed the princess's father as the headman of their new palace, and there, the storm god finally found his rest. Time flowed on. The days turned into years, and the years into generations. The blood of Susanoo mixed with the spirits of the earth. From this lineage, a new hero emerged. His name was Okunanushi. Okunanushi was a descendant of Susanoo, but his life began not as a ruler, but as a servant. He was the youngest of 80 brothers. These brothers were cruel and jealous. They treated Okunanushi like a baggage carrier, forcing him to haul their heavy sacks as they traveled the land seeking wives. One day, the brothers were traveling to the land of Inaba. They had heard of a beautiful princess named Yagamiheim, and each wished to marry her. As they walked along the coast, they came upon a pitiful sight. A small white hare lay on the ground, skinned and raw, weeping in agony. The cruel brothers laughed. They told the hare, "If you want to heal, you should bathe in the salty sea and then lie in the wind on a high mountain." The innocent hare believed them. It dragged its painful body into the stinging salt water and then lay in the wind. The salt dried and cracked its skin. The wind blew sand into the wounds. The pain was excruciating. The hare cried out. Its suffering multiplied. Hours later, Okunanushi arrived, lagging behind with the heavy bags. He saw the weeping hare. Unlike his brothers, his heart was filled with compassion. "Why do you cry?" he asked gently. The hare told him the story. It had tried to cross the sea by tricking the sharks, hopping on their backs, but the last shark had bitten its fur off. Then, the brothers had tricked it again. Okunanushi shook his head. "Go to the river," he instructed softly. "Wash yourself in the fresh water. Then gather the pollen of the cattails that grow by the bank. Spread it on the ground and roll in it. It will restore your fur." The hare did as he said. The cool water soothed the burns. The soft, yellow pollen coated its skin like a healing balm. The pain vanished, and white fur began to grow. The hare looked at Okunanushi with knowing eyes. It was no ordinary animal. It spoke a prophecy. "Your brothers will never marry the Princess Yagami. Even though you carry their bags, you are the one she will choose." The prophecy came true. The princess rejected the 80 brothers and chose Okunanushi. The brothers were consumed by rage. They plotted to kill him. They heated a giant rock until it was red hot and rolled it down a hill, telling him it was a boar. Okunanushi caught it and was burned to death. But his mother, distraught, begged the heavenly gods for help, and they restored him to life. Realizing he was not safe in the land of the living, Okunanushi fled. He went to the one place his brothers dared not follow. He went to Katacu-Kuni, the underworld. There, he sought the counsel of his great ancestor, Susanoo. Susanoo was now the lord of the underworld. He was old, formidable, and cranky. When Okunanushi arrived, Susanoo was not impressed, but his daughter, Suserahime, saw the young hero and fell instantly in love. Susanoo decided to test this young suitor. It was a trial of endurance. He threw Okunanushi into a room filled with snakes, but Suserahime gave him a magic scarf to ward them off. The next night, Susanoo threw him into a room filled with centipedes and wasps. Again, the daughter saved him. Finally, Susanoo took Okunanushi to a great field and fired a humming arrow into the tall grass. "Go fetch it," he commanded. As Okunanushi entered the field, Susanoo set the grass on fire. The flames circled him, but a mouse appeared and showed him a hole in the ground where he could hide until the fire passed. Okunanushi had survived everything, but he was tired of the tests. While Susanoo was sleeping, Okunanushi tied the old god's hair to the rafters of his palace. He stole Susanoo's great sword, his bow and arrows, and his daughter, Suserahime. He put her on his back and ran. As they fled, the lute Okunanushi carried brushed against a tree. The sound woke Susanoo. The old god jumped up, pulling the palace down around him because of his hair tied to the rafters. By the time he untangled himself, Okunanushi was far away. Susanoo ran to the border of the underworld. He looked at the fleeing figure of the young man. He did not scream in anger. He smiled. He shouted after him, "Use that sword and bow to chase away your jealous brothers. Make yourself the master of the great land. Make my daughter your lawful wife. Build a palace with pillars rooted in the rock and crossbeams reaching the clouds. You scoundrel." It was a blessing, delivered in the gruff voice of the storm god. Okunanushi returned to the surface. He defeated his brothers. He united the land. He became the ruler of the earthly realm, creating a nation of prosperity and medicine. He was the master of the great land, but the eyes of heaven were watching. High above, Amaterasu looked down at the bustling nation Okunanushi had built. She decided that this land should not be ruled by earthly spirits, but by her own descendants. The land of Japan was meant for the children of the sun. She sent messengers down. It was a time of tense negotiation known as the kunyozuri, the transfer of the land. The first messengers were seduced by the earthly life and did not return. Finally, she sent the warrior gods Takamikazuchi and Futsunushi. They descended to the beach of Inasa in Izuma. Takamikazuchi sat on the tip of his upright sword, balancing effortlessly on the waves. He demanded that Okunanushi cede the land. Okunanushi consulted his sons. One son agreed immediately. The other, stronger son, challenged the heavenly messenger to a test of strength. This grappling match is said to be the origin of sumo wrestling. The heavenly god crushed the earthly son's hand like a reed. Okunanushi knew the time had come. He agreed to abdicate his rule, but he asked for one condition. He asked that a place of worship be built for him, a shrine as grand as the heavenly palaces. Amaterasu agreed. The massive Izuma Taisha shrine was constructed, its pillars tall and thick. There, Okunanushi retired to rule over the invisible world of spirits and matchmaking, leaving the visible world of politics to the heavenly gods. With the land secured, Amaterasu summoned her grandson, Ninnogi no Mikoto. She gave him the 3 treasures, the mirror that had lured her from the cave, the jewels of the oath, and the sword found in the serpent's tail. She told him, "Go down and rule. The land is yours." Ninnogi descended. He did not come to Izuma, but to the peak of Mount Takachiho in Kyushu. He floated down through the clouds, guided by Sarutahiko, a strange earthly god with a long nose who illuminated the path. Ninnogi stood on the mountain peak. The air was crisp. He walked through the land and met a beautiful woman. She was Konohana Sakuheim, the princess of the cherry blossoms. He was captivated by her beauty and asked for her hand. Her father, the mountain god, was pleased, but he sent 2 daughters to Ninnogi. He sent the blossom princess, and he also sent her older sister, Iwanagaheim, the rock princess. The rock princess was ugly and rough like a stone. Ninnogi was shallow. He looked at the rock princess and sent her back, keeping only the beautiful blossom princess. The mountain god was disappointed. He sent a message to Ninnogi. "If you had taken the rock princess, the lives of your children would have been eternal and unchanging like the rocks. But because you chose only the blossom princess, the lives of your descendants will be beautiful but fleeting, falling quickly like cherry blossoms in the wind." And so, the emperors and the people of Japan became mortal. Their lives became brief, fragile, and poignantly beautiful. And so, the age of the gods draws to a close. The floating bridge has vanished, the cave is silent, and the great serpent is but a memory in the flow of the river. The chaotic energies of creation have settled into the mountains, the rivers, and the wind that gently taps against your window tonight. We have journeyed from the beginning of time to the birth of a nation. Now, let us rest here for a moment, in the quiet aftermath of these great deeds. If you are still awake, let your eyes feel heavy. If you are drifting, let the story fade into a comfortable dream. We are not done yet, but the path ahead is slower, quieter, and full of peace. The mist has cleared from the mountains of myth. The floating bridge has vanished into the ether. The cave of the sun goddess is silent, and the great serpent is but a memory in the flow of the river. We have journeyed through the violent, creative, and tragic energies of the age of the gods. We have witnessed the birth of the islands and the descent of the imperial lineage. But as the narrative of the Kojiki fades into the twilight of history, something else remains. It is a feeling. It is a presence that lingers in the cedar forests, in the spray of the waterfalls, and in the quiet, gravel-lined paths of the shrines that dot the Japanese landscape today. This presence is the essence of Shinto. As we shift our gaze from the ancient stories to the living philosophy they left behind, I invite you to slow down. Let the active energy of the Dragon Slayer settle. Imagine yourself sitting on a wooden veranda overlooking a mossy garden. The rain is falling gently, tapping against the leaves. We are entering a space of contemplation, a guided meditation on the way of Kami. To understand the spirit of Japan, one must first wrestle with a single elusive word, Kami. We have used this word throughout our journey to refer to Izanagi, Amaterasu, and Susanoo. We translate it as God or deity, but these English words are imperfect vessels. They carry the weight of Western monotheism, of omnipotent creators and moral judges, of beings who exist apart from the world. But in the worldview of Shinto, Kami are not distant, they are not perfect, and they are certainly not separate from nature. The great 18th century scholar Motori Norinaga dedicated his life to understanding this concept. After studying the ancient texts, he offered a definition that is as beautiful as it is broad. He said that Kami is anything that possesses superior power and inspires a sense of awe. Think about that for a moment. Anything that inspires awe. This includes the noble deities of the heavens, certainly. But it also includes the birds, the beasts, the trees, and the plants. It includes the ocean that sustains life and the storm that destroys it. A mountain can be Kami, a waterfall can be Kami. The thunder rolling across the summer sky is Kami. Even a single, uniquely shaped rock, sitting in silence for 10,000 years, can be Kami. This is the concept of Yaoyorozu no Kami, the 8 million Kami. In the Japanese language, the number 8 often signifies infinity. It means there are countless spirits inhabiting every corner of the world. It is an animistic view, seeing the universe not as dead matter, but as a living, breathing web of spiritual energy. When you look at a giant camphor tree with its thick, twisted roots and its canopy blocking out the sun, you feel something. You feel a presence that is older and greater than yourself. In Shinto, that feeling is not just an emotion. It is a recognition of the Kami dwelling within the tree. It is a recognition of Musubi, the mystical power of becoming and creation that binds the universe together. These spirits are not morally perfect. Just as nature can be gentle or cruel, Kami possess two souls. They have the Nigimitama, the gentle, peaceful soul that brings rain and harvest, but they also have the Eramitama, the rough, turbulent soul that brings typhoons and earthquakes. The goal of Shinto practice is not to obey a set of commandments, for there are no scriptures like the Bible or the sutras. There is no dogma. The goal is simply to respect this power, to live in harmony with it, and to cultivate Makoto, a sincere heart that aligns with the truth of nature. This presence is most strongly felt in the spaces set aside for them. Let us now close our eyes and imagine walking into one of these sacred spaces. We are entering the Chinju no Mori, the sacred grove. The boundary between the profane world of humans and the sacred world of the Kami is marked by a gate. This is the torii, simple, elegant, and often painted a striking vermilion. The torii stands as a portal. It has no doors. It does not block your path. It simply marks a transition. When you walk beneath its crossbar, you are leaving the noise, the stress, and the pollution of the modern city behind. You are entering the realm of the spirit. As you pass through the torii, you find yourself on the sando, the approach path. Beneath your feet, you hear a sound. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The path is lined with white gravel. This is not an accident of landscaping. The sound of your footsteps on the loose stones serves a purpose. It alerts the spirit of the shrine to your arrival. But more importantly, it centers you. The sound cuts through your wandering thoughts, bringing your attention to the here and the now. The air inside the Shinjin Mori feels different. It is cooler, damper. The trees here are ancient, protected for centuries from the axe. Their branches intertwine overhead, creating a cathedral of green leaves. The light that filters through is soft and dappled. In this quiet gloom, the vermilion of the shrine buildings glows with a warm, protective energy. Red is the color of vitality, of fire, and of the sun. It is believed to ward off evil spirits and preserve the sanctity of the wood. The architecture of the shrine itself is a marvel of natural beauty. It is often built of unpainted cypress wood, smelling of resin and forest. The roof might be thatched with miscanthus grass, thick and golden brown, or covered in oxidized copper turned a soft green. On the roof, you might see the chigi, forked finials that reach up toward the sky like crossed swords, and the katsuogi, heavy logs laid horizontally along the ridge. These are architectural memories of ancient storehouses and palaces, preserved in form for millennia. At the heart of the complex stands the Honden, the main sanctuary. This is the dwelling place of the kami. But unlike a church or a temple where you might go inside to pray, the Honden is closed. It is surrounded by a fence. The doors are shut. Deep inside, hidden from all eyes, is the Gashinti, the sacred body of the kami. It might be a mirror, a sword, a jewel, or a simple stone. It is the physical anchor for the divine spirit. We do not see it. We do not need to see it. The mystery is part of the reverence. We stand outside at the Hayden or worship hall, and we offer our respect from a distance. But before one can approach the kami, one must be clean. This brings us to the very core of Shinto ritual, the concept of misagi and purification. In the Shinto worldview, there is no concept of original sin. Humans are born pure. We are children of the kami. However, as we go through life, we accumulate burdens. We are exposed to death, to blood, to illness, and to negative emotions. We commit selfish acts. This accumulation is called kigar. It translates to pollution or defilement, but a more poetic reading of the characters suggests withered spirit. When we are weighed down by the stress and grime of the world, our vitality, our ki, withers. To restore our vitality, to return to our natural state of brightness estate, known as hair, we must purify ourselves. This is the act of misagi. Recall Izanagi, bathing in the river to wash away the rot of the underworld. Every time a person visits a shrine, they reenact a miniature version of that mythic event. Imagine approaching the Temizuya, the water pavilion located near the entrance of the shrine. It is a stone basin filled with clear, running water. Wooden ladles rest across the top. The ritual is precise, a meditation in movement. You take the ladle in your right hand and scoop up the water. You pour it over your left hand. The water is cold. It shocks the skin, washing away the dust of the world. Then you switch hands. You hold the ladle in your left hand and wash the right. Finally, you pour a little water into your cupped left hand and bring it to your mouth. You rinse your mouth, purifying the words you speak. You do not swallow. You spit the water gently beside the basin. Finally, you tip the ladle up, letting the remaining water run down the handle to cleanse it for the next person. Left hand, right hand, mouth, handle. It is a simple sequence, but it is profound. With the water, you are washing away the kigari. You are shedding the withered spirit and preparing to stand before the divine with a sincere heart. Water is not the only purifier. Salt is also sacred. You may have seen sumo wrestlers tossing handfuls of salt into the ring before a match. They are purifying the earth, driving away evil spirits to ensure a fair and sacred contest. At funerals, attendees are often given small packets of salt to sprinkle on themselves before entering their homes, ensuring that the pollution of death does not follow them across the threshold. There is also the purification of the hooray. If you have ever attended a formal ceremony at a shrine, you will have seen the priest. He is dressed in pristine white robes, representing absolute purity. He holds a wand called the onisa, made of a sakaki branch with zigzagging paper streamers attached to it. The priest stands before you. He waves the wand, left, right, left, swish, swish, swish. The sound of the paper rustling is dry and crisp. It is the sound of the wind sweeping through the trees. It is believed that this movement sweeps away the impurities clinging to your aura, just as a broom sweeps dust from a floor. You bow your head and you feel a sense of lightness return. The weight on your shoulders lifts. You are restored. Once purified, the community comes together to celebrate the rhythm of the seasons. This brings us to the Matsuri. The word Matsuri is usually translated as festival, but its root meaning is to serve or to invite. A Matsuri is a time when the kami is invited out of the shrine to travel through the community, to bless the homes and the harvest, and to play with the people. Japan is an agricultural nation, and the rhythm of Shinto is the rhythm of rice. In the spring, the festivals are prayers for a good planting. In the autumn, they are prayers of thanksgiving for the harvest. The life of the spirit is tied to the life of the soil. During a major Matsuri, the kami is transferred from the hidden inner sanctuary into a mikoshi. A mikoshi is a portable shrine, a magnificent gilded palanquin that looks like a miniature temple. It is incredibly heavy. It takes dozens of people to carry it. Imagine the scene at a summer night festival. The air is thick and humid. Lanterns glow with a soft golden light strung up in rows along the streets. The smell of grilled squid and yakisoba mixes with the scent of incense. And then you hear it. Boom, boom, boom. The deep, resonant beat of the taiko drums. The sound hits you in the chest. It is the heartbeat of the festival. Flutes pipe high and shrill, a melody that sounds like birdsong from another world. The mikoshi approaches. It rests on two long wooden beams. A team of bearers, dressed in traditional coats, carries it on their shoulders. They shout in unison, "Washoi, washoi." The rhythm helps them bear the weight. They heave and sway. The mikoshi jolts and bounces. This is intentional. The shaking of the portable shrine is said to amuse the kami inside and to rouse its energy. It is a moment of controlled chaos, of sweat and joy, where the boundary between the gods and the humans dissolves in a celebration of life. The festival might also feature kagura, the sacred dance. Do you remember Aimnozum dancing on the tub to lure the sun goddess from the cave? Every kagura performance is a distant echo of that mythic moment. Masked dancers, accompanied by drums and flutes, reenact the stories of the gods. They invite the spirits to descend and be entertained, renewing the bond between heaven and earth. But beyond the loud celebrations of the Matsuri, the deepest connection to the kami is found in the silence of nature itself. Before there were shrines, before there were buildings with roofs and walls, the people of ancient Japan worshipped nature directly. These ancient places of worship are called Iwakura sacred rocks. They are the oldest form of Shinto. Travel to the coast of Ise, and you will see the Myoto Iwa, the wedded rocks. Two massive stones rise out of the sea, one large and one small, representing the husband and wife creators, Izanagi and Izanami. They are tied together by a massive shimonawa, a rope of rice straw that weighs over a ton. It is replaced 3 times a year in a special ceremony. Stand there at dawn during the summer solstice. The tide washes against the rocks. The sound of the ocean is eternal. And then, perfectly framed between the 2 rocks, the sun rises. Amaterasu, the sun goddess, climbs out of the Pacific Ocean, illuminating the bond between her parents. It is a moment of cosmic alignment, a natural cathedral built of stone, water, and light. Travel to the deep mountains of Kumano, and you will find the Naki Falls. It is the tallest waterfall in Japan, a single plunge of water dropping over 130 meters down a cliff face. The waterfall itself is the deity. It is worshipped as Heryu Gongen. There is no idol, no statue. The roaring column of white water, crashing into the pool below with the force of thunder, is the presence of the divine. To stand before it, sprayed by the mist, is to stand before the raw power of nature. Or consider the mountains themselves. Mount Fuji, with its perfect, snow-capped cone, is not just a mountain. It is the body of the princess Konohana Sakuheim, the deity of blossoming trees. In the past, monks would climb the mountain as a form of ascetic practice, believing that each step took them closer to the spiritual realm. This is Shintaizan, the mountain as the body of the god. This profound respect for nature is perhaps the most important lesson Shinto has for the modern world. In the Shinto view, humans are not the masters of nature. We are not separate from it, and we certainly do not own it. We are guests. We are part of the family of the 8 million kami. The trees, the rivers, and the stones are our kin. To pollute the river is to pollute the kami. To destroy the forest is to destroy the sacred grove. This ecological awareness is woven into the very fabric of the aesthetic. It is why the shrines are made of unpainted wood, allowed to age and darken with time. It is why the gardens are designed to look natural, with moss growing over the stones. It is the appreciation of wabi-sabi, the beauty of things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. The way of the kami is not a path of strict rules, but a path of awareness. It is the recognition that the world around us is alive, breathing, and filled with spirit. From the great sun to the smallest stone, everything has a voice if we are quiet enough to listen. As the sun sets on the mountains, the shadows lengthen, and the vermilion gates of the shrines begin to dim in the twilight. The paper lanterns are lit, casting a warm glow on the gravel paths. The day of the humans is ending, and the time of the spirits is beginning. We have come to the end of our long journey. We started in the chaos of the primordial oil, watched the islands take shape, saw the sun hide in a cave, and followed the storm god to his redemption. We have walked the path of history and sat in the quiet of the sacred grove. Now, let us rest here for a moment in the quiet aftermath of these great deeds. The stories of the gods have become the soil of the culture, feeding the roots of a nation that still looks to the rising sun with reverence. If you are still awake, let your eyes feel heavy. Let the rhythm of the gravel underfoot and the sound of the wind in the cedars lull you into a deep peace. If you are drifting, let the story fade into a comfortable dream. We are not done yet, for where the history of gods ends, the stories of the common people begin. But those are tales for another night. The path ahead is slower, quieter, and full of peace. The fire in the hearth has burned down to glowing embers. The shadows in the room have softened, stretching out across the floor like sleepy cats. We have traveled a long way tonight. We have seen the birth of gods, the rage of storms, and the quiet dignity of the shrines. But now, as the heavy blanket of the night settles over the world, it is time to leave the high heavens behind. It is time to lower our gaze from the mountain peaks to the village edge. It is time to listen to the whispers of the little spirits. These are the yokai in the daylight. They are just stories. But here, in the comfortable drift between waking and sleeping, they are our companions. They are not monsters. They are the playful, protective, and sometimes mischievous spirits that inhabit the twilight. So, let your breathing slow down. Let your eyelids grow heavy. Let us walk softly into the world of folklore. Our journey begins at the edge of the rice fields, where the tall green stalks rustle in the evening breeze. Here, guarding the harvest and the shrines, we find the kitsune. These are the fox spirits. Imagine a fox. It is not a common animal, but a creature of elegance and magic. Its fur is a brilliant, rusty orange, soft as silk and warm to the touch. Its tail is thick and bushy, ending in a tip of pure white. In the world of the spirits, the older and wiser a fox becomes, the more powerful it grows. And with this power comes a physical sign. A second tail appears, then a third. The most ancient and divine foxes, the ones who have seen the seasons turn for 1,000 years, possess 9 magnificent tails that fan out like a golden peacock. These are the messengers of Inari, the deity of rice and agriculture. If you have ever walked through the vermilion tunnels of the Fushimi Inari Shrine, you have felt their presence. They sit in stone, watching over the path. They wear red bibs around their necks, a sign of their sacred duty. They are the guardians of the grain. They chase away the mice and the rats that would steal the winter food. They ensure that the storehouses are full and the families are fed. There is a special type of rain that falls in Japan. It happens when the sun is still shining, yet the rain falls from a clear blue sky. The light catches the droplets, turning them into liquid gold. This is called the Kitsune no Yomori, the fox's wedding. Legend says that during these sun showers, the foxes are holding a wedding procession. If you look closely at the distant hills, through the shimmering curtain of rain, you might see them. They walk on 2 legs, dressed in the finest kimonos of white silk. They carry paper lanterns that glow even in the daylight. They are celebrating love and union, hidden behind the veil of the rain. The foxes are fond of us, but they are also fond of food. There is one treat they love above all else. It is aburage, slices of deep-fried tofu. The skin is golden and slightly sweet, and the inside is soft and white. People leave these offerings at the shrines, placing the tofu on small ceramic plates before the stone foxes. It is a gift of gratitude. It is a way of saying thank you for the protection, for the harvest, and for the magic. Sometimes, late at night, you might see a faint, bobbing light in the fields. It hovers and dances, a pale blue or soft orange orb. This is the kitsunbi, the foxfire. It is not a fire that burns. It is a fire that guides. It is the breath of the fox, illuminating the dark paths of the countryside. Some say the foxes carry hoshinotama, star balls, which glow with the light of the cosmos. These balls contain their souls and their magic. A fox will guard its star ball with its life, for it is the source of its power. They are shapeshifters, these foxes. They can turn into beautiful women or wise old men, but they do not do this to harm. They do it to interact with the world they love. They are the white foxes, the Zenko, the benevolent celestial spirits who bring wealth and happiness. They are the warm, furry presence at the edge of the dream, watching over the fields while you sleep. While the foxes guard the fields with elegance, another creature plays in the deep woods. We leave the open rice paddies and step into the shadow of the forest. The moon is full and round, casting beams of silver light through the canopy of leaves. Here we hear a sound, pan, pan, pan. It is a hollow, rhythmic drumming. It sounds like a drum, but it is softer, more organic. It is the sound of the tanuki. The tanuki is a raccoon dog, a real animal native to the forests of Japan. It has a masked face, like a bandit, but its eyes are kind. It has a round, tubby body covered in thick, coarse fur. In folklore, the tanuki is a master of disguise, even more so than the fox. But where the fox is graceful, the tanuki is jovial. It is a lover of food, a lover of drink, and a lover of fun. The sound you hear is the tanuki drumming on its own belly. Under the light of the harvest moon, they gather in clearings, standing on their hind legs. They drum on their large, round stomachs, creating a rhythm that echoes through the trees. This is the shojoji, the moon party. They are not calling for war. They are calling for joy. They are celebrating the beauty of the night. The tanuki is a creature of abundance. If you visit a Japanese shop or restaurant, you will often see a statue of a tanuki standing at the door. He wears a large straw hat to protect him from the weather. He carries a promissory note, a sign of trust and business. And most importantly, he carries a ceramic bottle of sake in one hand. He is the spirit of hospitality. He invites you in. He promises that there will be good food and warm company inside. These spirits love to transform. They place a single leaf on their forehead, do a little somersault, and poof, they become something else. But unlike the perfect illusions of the fox, the tanuki's disguises are often a little imperfect, a little silly. There is a famous story of a tanuki who turned himself into a tea kettle to help a poor man. This is the bunbuku chagama. The man took the kettle to a temple, but when the priest put the kettle on the fire to boil water, the kettle shouted, "Ouch, it's hot." The kettle sprouted legs and a tail and ran around the room. It was a tea kettle with the fur of a raccoon dog. It did not bring fear, it brought laughter. It brought wealth to the poor man who set up a show to display the dancing kettle. The tanuki was happy, for he was fed sweet buns and treated with kindness. They are the spirits of luck. They are the reminder that life should not be taken too seriously. They remind us that there is magic in a full belly, a warm drink, and a good laugh under the moon. They are the round, comforting shadows in the forest, drumming us a lullaby. From the moonlit forest, we move into the safety of the home. We walk down the quiet village road and slide open the wooden door of an old thatched roof farmhouse. Inside, the air smells of straw mats and aged wood. In the center of the main room, the irori, the sunken hearth, glows with the embers of a charcoal fire. It is warm here, it is safe, but the house is not empty. If you listen closely, you might hear the patter of tiny feet running across the tatami mats, pitapat, pitapat. You might hear a soft, innocent giggle echoing from the back room, the zashiki, the parlor reserved for guests. This is the zashikiwarashi, It is the spirit of the house, appearing in the form of a small child. It has short, bobbed hair and pink, rosy cheeks. It wears a traditional kimono, perhaps patterned with small flowers or geometric shapes. The fabric is red, the color of protection and vitality. The zashi kiwarashi is a guardian. It lives within the house, usually in the grandest families or the oldest homes of the Tohoku region. It is a shy spirit. It does not often show itself to adults. It prefers to play with the children of the house, becoming an invisible friend who shares toys and secrets. They are playful spirits. Sometimes, an old grandmother sitting by the fire might find tiny footprints in the white ash of the hearth. They are small, perfect prints, showing that the spirit has been warming itself by the fire. Sometimes, late at night, you might hear the sound of a paper door sliding open, or the soft worry sound of a wooden spinning top dancing on the floor. These sounds are not frightening, they are comforting. They are a sign that the Zashiki Warashi is home. And as long as the spirit is home, the family is blessed. The presence of the Zashiki Warashi brings immense fortune. The crops will grow tall, the business will prosper, the children will be healthy. It is the living embodiment of the happiness of the household. The family takes good care of their little guest. They might leave a small bowl of red bean rice or a piece of colorful candy in the parlor room. They speak softly, ensuring the atmosphere of the house is harmonious, for the spirit dislikes fighting and anger. It loves laughter. It loves the warmth of a loving family. It is the spirit of childhood innocence, preserved forever within the wooden walls of the home. It watches over you as you sleep, a tiny, benevolent guardian ensuring that your dreams are sweet and your fortune is bright. We leave the warmth of the hearth now, stepping back out into the cool night air. We walk along the narrow roads that wind through the countryside, connecting village to village. The snow has begun to fall, large, soft flakes that settle in silence on the ground. The world turns white and gray. At a crossroads, standing under the shelter of an old cedar tree, we see a stone figure. It is small, perhaps only the height of a child. It is carved from gray granite, weathered by decades of wind and rain. The features are smooth and simple. A round face, closed eyes with a serene expression, hands clasped together in prayer. This is Jizo Bosatsu. He is the guardian of travelers and the protector of children. You will know him by what he wears. Around his stone neck is a bib made of red cloth. On his head is a hand-knitted cap of red wool. These are not part of the statue. They are gifts. They are knitted by the grandmothers of the village, by mothers who wish to protect their children, by travelers who wish for a safe journey. They dress the stone god to keep him warm in the cold snow. Jizo stands at the boundaries. He stands at the edge of the village. He stands where the road splits. He stands between the world of the living and the world of the spirits. He is the guide. He carries a staff with 6 metal rings at the top. When he walks, the rings jingle, ching, ching. This sound is to alert the small creatures, the beetles and the worms, to move out of his path so he does not step on them. He is a being of infinite compassion. There is a famous story called Kasajizo, the Hat Jizo. An old man went to town to sell straw hats on New Year's Eve, but he sold none. On his way home, in the freezing snow, he saw 6 Jizo statues standing by the road. They looked so cold, the snow was piling up on their stone heads. The old man felt pity. He took the unsold straw hats and placed them gently on the heads of the statues. He did not have enough hats, so for the last one, he gave his own headscarf. He went home empty-handed, but with a warm heart. That night, the old couple heard a sound outside. Thud, thud, thud. It sounded like something heavy being dragged. They opened the door. There, on their doorstep, was a mountain of food, rice, and gold. And walking away into the snowy mist were 6 small figures, wearing straw hats and a headscarf. The Jizo had returned the kindness. When you see a Jizo statue, you feel a sense of deep peace. He is the silent watcher in the snow. He is the promise that no matter how far you travel, you are never truly alone. He watches over the souls of those who have passed, holding them in his sleeves, keeping them safe until they can be born again. He is the rock of comfort in a changing world. The road leads us finally to the sea. The snow turns to sand. The sound of the wind is replaced by the rhythmic breathing of the ocean. The waves roll in, whoosh, hush, whoosh, hush. Beneath these waves, far deeper than any anchor can reach, lies a world of eternal silence and blue light. Down, down, down we go, sinking past the schools of silverfish, past the swaying forests of kelp, to the sandy floor of the ocean. Here stands the Ryakujo, the palace of the Dragon King. The walls of the palace are made of red and white coral. The roof is tiled with the green scales of sea bream. The windows are made of crystal. It glows with a bioluminescent light, soft and wavering. This is the home of Ryujin, the dragon god of the sea. Ryujin is a magnificent being. In his dragon form, he is long and serpentine, with scales that shimmer like pearls, and eyes that hold the depth of the abyss. He is the master of the tides. In his hand, he holds 2 magical jewels, the Kanju, the tide-bing jewel, and the Manju, the tide-flowing jewel. With these, he controls the breath of the ocean. He makes the waters rise to hug the shore, and he makes them recede to reveal the shells and the sand. The palace is a place where time stands still. You may know the story of Urashima Taro, the fisherman who saved a turtle. The turtle took him to the dragon palace. He stayed for 3 days, feasting on delicacies, watching the fish dance, and listening to the music of the waves. But when he returned to the surface, 300 years had passed. The Dragon Palace is a realm of absolute detachment from the worries of the surface world. There are no clocks there. There are no deadlines. There is only the slow, graceful movement of the water. The turtles glide past, wise and ancient. The jellyfish drift like floating bells. The silence is heavy and comforting, like a thick quilt. Ryujin watches over the sailors and the fishermen. He ensures the safety of the ships, but mostly he sleeps. He coils his long body around the pillars of his coral palace, resting his great head on his claws. He dreams of the tides. His breathing creates the currents that circulate around the globe, warming the lands and bringing life to the seas. To think of Ryujin is to think of the deep, slow rhythm of sleep itself. It is to let go of the surface, to let go of the noise, and to sink into the beautiful, blue silence of the deep. The dragon sleeps in the coral palace. The fox curls its tail in the shrine, covering its nose against the cold. The tanuki has put down his drum and found a pile of soft leaves. The little Zashiki Warashi has blown out the candle and curled up on the tatami mat. And the stone Jizo watches over the quiet road, his red bib fluttering gently in the breeze. The stories of the gods and the spirits have all been told, woven into the fabric of the night. You have walked across the floating bridge, stood in the cave of the sun, and rested in the sacred grove. You have met the guardians of the field and the forest. Now, the mist covers the islands once more. Everything is still. Everything is peaceful. The world is safe, watched over by 8 million spirits who wish you well. Thank you for listening and for keeping these old stories alive in your dreams. Good night.